students here who have put together some questions for the guidance. My name is Mr. O'Mara.
And I'm Mr. Williamson.
And we both work in the guidance office here at the high school. So obviously this year is a little different, and the TV media class has come up with a bunch of questions to ask that they have found necessary on their end. So I'll hand it over to them.
So hi, Mr. O'Mara, and hi, Mr. Williamson. So as we know, students are back in school hybrid this year. Have you guys seen any significant changes in student behavior and social skills, and how are students adapting to the new schedule?
So I guess I can start. I mean, I think overall, in terms of the schedule, students are adapting really well. I've been really impressed, I think, across the board with students, teachers, administrators, kind of how everybody really is working together to try to make this work. And I think we're doing a decent job. You know, it's not the same. It's not, ideal in any sense of the word, but I don't feel like a global pandemic is an ideal thing anyway. But I do think that as a whole, when it comes to, figuring out the schedule, the ins and outs, the in-person and remote learning and everything, I think people are doing generally a really nice job with it. That said, I do think there's stuff that's missing. I think that it's hard to make, connections with people. I think high school is a time where people are meeting new people and friend groups are shifting, and you're trying to make connections with teachers. And that's a lot harder this year when we are seeing each other in person and everyone's wearing a mask and you can't see if somebody's smiling or laughing at the joke you just made. And then otherwise we're at home where we can actually see what each other looks like. But at the same time, it's hard to make friend connections when you're staring at a screen all day. So as much as I feel like we're doing our best, there's still stuff missing, which I think is, it sort of is par for the course. I don't know if there'd be a way around it necessarily. That's kind of my thoughts, I guess.
Mr. O'Mara, you have anything to add on to that, or?
Yeah, I think Mr. Williamson kind of summed it up really well there. I will say that in the same way that we've talked about it before the pandemic, that people are able to hide behind a computer screen. I think we're seeing that more often in a different way. So before, it may be kind of, if you go online, you see people who are saying things that they wouldn't necessarily say to someone in person. But in a different way during kind of this remote learning, what I'm seeing and hearing and experiencing is that people whom, if they were in a classroom, they may be asked to speak up, or they may a teacher might just automatically ask them a question. Whereas now, kind of with the computer screen there, it's a little more difficult, and it's a little trickier to do that in a comfortable way. And so my worry is that students are able to kind of slip between the cracks a little bit more than if they were in front of a teacher for 5 days. But I will say that the teachers are doing an incredible job at trying to identify those things, as well as the administration. So there's nothing ideal about this situation, but like Mr. Williamson said, I feel like we're doing a pretty good job here at Dover Sherburne.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So for our second question, we're wondering what you think students should be doing for self-care while we're in this hybrid model.
You want to start, Mr.
Yeah, I'll start this one. I think what's most important, and something that I've been doing myself, is really identifying things that are not involving a phone, not involving a computer screen, and kind of just unplugging for a little while. I think we're now so connected to our phones anyways, and then when you add in this level of Zoom, you add in this level of remote learning, people are in front of computers or screens far too much. So acknowledging that we have an hour break at lunch now, and if you're at home, get outside, get some fresh air. It really does kind of help recenter you. And also, if you're able to, find a spot in your house that you can deem your workspace. So I live in a pretty small apartment in Boston, and I had to find a little space that when I was sitting there, I knew that I was doing work. So it wasn't on the couch with the TV in front of me. It had to be somewhere else so that I can kind of get into the mindset of this is where I have to work when I'm at home.
Nice. Would you like to add to that, Mr. Williamson?
Sure. I think echoing obviously all the things that Mr. O said, making sure that you're finding time to do other things. I think for me, for a lot of folks, it's been hard on my days that I'm home to separate, work from everything else that I'm doing. I'm sitting there writing emails, and then when does my day end? And that's been a hard question for me to try to figure out. Like, I'm used to, checking my email and doing all those things. So I've kind of had to make some rules for myself in terms of when I need to be done, and I think that to the extent possible, like Mr. O said, making sure that there are times where it's not about, being on a screen or doing, work or checking your emails or things like that. Trying something new. Like, I've had a couple students who have learned, really gotten into like baking, for instance. It's something that you can do at home, and it's not, you're not with a lot of other people, but it's something that's different in a different kind of mindset, and you're using different parts of your mind to do something that's completely different than sitting here and emailing your teachers and, watching, videos that your math teachers have created and things like that, which are all good and wonderful, but, making sure there's time for the other stuff too. I'd also say a sleep schedule is important too, making sure that to the extent possible, you're keeping a regular sleep schedule. I know that the remote Wednesdays are a little tricky with that, with weekends, just being like a, adolescent or a teenager anyway, like sleep schedules are typically all over the place, but kind of to the extent you can, trying to go to bed around the same time every night and around getting up around the same time every morning can really help in terms of just your overall alertness kind of every day. So that's kind of just another like medical tip that I would have.
All right, thank you. Another question we have is, have grades been affected this year due to the hybrid model and COVID?
So in terms of sort of what the grades are looking like and sort of our system of grading, yes, I think that we have pretty much changed how our semester grades are going to be calculated. In a normal year, our semester grade is basically quarter one plus quarter two divided by 2. So it's the average of those 2 quarters. This year, because we started the year a little bit later, and because it's a weird start to the year and everyone's getting used to it, teachers were thinking, well, what if I only have 1 test in quarter 1 and I have 5 tests in quarter 2? It doesn't seem fair that they would be evenly calculated in the semester grade. So instead of that, we're basically having the semester grade have a rolling average. So instead of the average of quarter 1 and quarter 2, it's just the average of all of your tests over the semester and all of your homework and all of your participation. Ideally, that would sort of take the pressure off any one test along the way, so that if the very beginning of the year was a little rocky for anybody, it's not going to matter quite as much. So that's a little bit of a shift in our grading model. We're working with Aspen now to try to figure out how to make it, look the right way and how to make it all calculate the right way. So, from the student standpoint, it may not actually look that different in terms of you'll still get a report card, you're still going to get interim reports or progress reports, but that semester grade is going to be calculated a little bit differently, which will hopefully take the pressure off this very start of the year already.
Right, and I've personally found that that's super helpful. I'm not super stressed about one test, because there were times last year where I had like 1 or 2 tests in this quarter and then like 5 or 6 in the others. So definitely take the pressure off. Now that's just one big grade instead of 2 separate ones average.
Good. That is very good to hear.
I also think, I know that we say this often, and I'm sure you've heard it over and over again, but it's important to remind ourselves that everyone is experiencing this. It's not just Dover Sherburne. And so I've talked to a lot of my friends and old colleagues who work in college admission, and overall, they're just saying, like, we're rolling with the punches. Like, we know that grades may be a little different. We know that kind of applications may look a little funky last year, this year, next year, kind of the year following. And so acknowledging that every single person in the entire world is experiencing this, and not just in our small little Dover Sherburne bubble, is really helpful to kind of take a step back, take a breath, and say, like, it's pretty weird for everyone, not just us.
Great. So our next question is how standardized testing will look this year. If we'll be having MCAS or like things like that.
So as far as we know, MCAS is happening this year. It's kind of one of those things. We're rolling with the punches. But the last note we got from the state is that it is happening. So kind of the standard freshmen will be taking that science MCAS, and sophomores will be taking that English as well as that math MCAS. In regards to SATs and ACTs, for those thinking kind of down the line for colleges, test dates are planned. So you can see them on the College Board, you can see them on the ACT, but it's a case-by-case basis, it's a day-by-day basis. So if you remember last year, we had a date scheduled in March and that got canceled. And then people kind of shifted that and signed up for the April date and that got canceled. And then May and then June and then July and then August. And so there is potential for test dates, but obviously that is a site-by-site decision. So some sites might cancel, some sites might not. But again, everyone's experiencing this. And so colleges understand that they may not see as many test scores as they normally would.
Cool. Would you like to add to that, Mr. Williamson? Or?
No, I don't know if I have much to add. I mean, I think it is very dependent on public health and sort of what happens with the virus. And, I know that the certainly here at DS, but also the state government and are really trying to do what we can to contain things so that it doesn't get to a point where it was last year where all the schools have to close down. But we'll kind of have to wait and see on that, unfortunately.
Yep. All right. Next question is, what planning should underclassmen start doing to get their college applications ready for junior year? So basically sophomores.
So my advice for the younger students, so the ninth graders and the 10th graders, are really to just be ninth graders and 10th graders. I think there's not a ton that you need to be doing at this point towards the college process. I think focusing on doing your homework and studying for tests and sort of living your life. Find things that bring you joy, that you enjoy doing. In terms of like outside activities. I understand, and I think that the whole world understands that there may not be as many options these days as there have been in the past. I think that we are in a place right now where like sports are still happening and the play is still going on, and clubs are still meeting even if remotely, which is all well and good. You may not be able to do the community service in the senior center like you maybe would have liked to do this year, or have an internship in a business that may or may not be actually going into meeting, or things like that. So options may be limited, but continue to do the ththings that you like to do and work on what you're working on. If you are sort of a ninth or a 10th grader, if you are starting to get interested, in what colleges are out there and what this process all looks like, you absolutely can start, going on a virtual tour out of college, doing virtual information sessions if you really want to. But it's, typically not something that I encourage students in 9th or 10th grade to get too worked up about, because it's not really time yet necessarily. I don't know if Mr. L, if you want to talk about sort of like juniors or anything, but.
Yeah, I think that in regards to juniors, our office is still kind of going full speed ahead with our normal seminars. So our juniors will meet with the counselors all through fourth quarter, going through, or I guess the second half of second semester now, not fourth quarter, to go through that process and to talk about what it looks like and to kind of explain. We'll still be doing our junior one-on-ones kind of, if we're able to do them in person, we will. If not, we'll be doing those over Zoom as well. In December, we're still hosting our parent guardian night. So it's a really good intro into the college process. Particularly if you don't have an older sibling who has gone through it, I recommend students attend that night as well. It's on Zoom. It's only about an hour long, and we've been able to kind of cut down on some of that time via Zoom, which is awesome. So it's not a lot of time for you, but it can be really informative. And sometimes what is nice is that we get some college admissions reps to tell you the things. So instead of believing what we are saying, you're hearing it directly from the source. So you're hearing it from the college admissions officers who are reading the applications from Dover-Sherborn. So that's really good. And to echo what Mr. Williamson said, and just to kind of wrap up all that, is you just have to do your COVID best. You just have to do your pandemic best. And at baseline, that should be lower than your normal best. I wouldn't expect everyone to be doing everything they want to be doing or can be doing, just because of the times that we're living in right now. So don't hold yourself to a standard that is unattainable, because you're just setting yourself up for failure, and no one needs that. So that goes for parents, that goes for teachers, that goes for counselors, that goes for everyone. Like, you got to give yourself a bar that is reachable, because if you push it too hard, you're just going to keep disappointing yourself. Whereas you can acknowledge that times aren't the best right now, and we're not necessarily loving every aspect of life, but as long as we're doing things that are making us happy and you're happy with what you're doing in school, that's all that matters.
Nice. So our final question is, what important dates or events are coming up for underclassmen until the end of this year?
Okay, let's think. We have Thanksgiving break soon. That's important. We have winter break soon. That's important. All of those traditional dates are still going to be there. We're still trying to keep a routine. I know last year, if you remember, we didn't have our April break. As of now, it looks like we're still doing the standard winter break. We'll have February break. We'll have April break, because our year is much more streamlined than it was in the spring. So those will still be there. You don't have to worry about us taking those away again this year.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that that's kind of where you started, Mr. L. I mean, I think that we all need a break, and I think that that's something that, to me, I'm looking forward to, sort of having a couple of days to not be 24/7 on my computer for a little bit and taking that time. And other than that, thinking about kind of what's coming out, we do have that junior parent night. If students are thinking about doing testing, all the things that we've kind of talked about are all there too. And at the same time, as we are looking forward to good things in the future and breaks and hopefully a vaccine coming out in the end of this pandemic, it's also a day at a time, so keeping in mind that we can hold those both things, like thinking about the future, but also making sure that we're thinking about where we are today and what am I going to do today that gives me a chance to take a little break or have a little fun, and do the things that I need to do, so there's a couple things out there coming our way, but nothing urgent. And like Mr. O said, we're doing our best and we're doing our COVID best. So if we're all on that same train, we'll get to the things when we get to them.
All righty. Thank you both for the questions this morning.
Yep.
Bright and early on this Thursday morning. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for taking your time out of the day and coming on.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.